Atlanta Press Club Debates 2008, the Republican race for the 4th District of the Public Service Commission, is brought to you from Georgia Public Broadcasting. Here is the moderator for today's debate.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Richard Warner, the host of Georgia's Business here on Georgia Public Broadcasting. Welcome to our 2008 election campaign debates originating from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting. This debate is organized by the Atlanta Press Club. Now up front, let's meet the Republican candidates facing each other in Georgia's Public Service Commission 4th District primary election. They are, in alphabetical order, Pam Davidson. Pam is a renewable energy advocate who is endorsed by the Georgia conservation voters. Davidson initiated and saw to completion the state's first comprehensive energy bill, which was recently signed into law by the governor. And Lauren W. McDonald, Jr. Lauren served in the Air National Guard, was a Jackson County Commissioner, and served 20 years in the Georgia House of Representatives, where he chaired the Industry Appropriations Committee. In 1998, he was appointed to the PSC by then-Governor Zell Miller. Now here's the format for tonight's debate. In the first round, each candidate will answer 2 questions from our 3 panelists. In the second round, the candidates will ask each other 2 questions apiece. Each candidate will then have time for rebuttal in this second round. And then in the third round, the panelists will continue questioning the candidates. And then finally, each candidate will have 30 seconds to make a closing statement. Before we get started, let's meet our 3 panelists tonight, selected by the Atlanta Press Club. First, we have Peralt Paul, who is a reporter with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Next, Jake Armstrong, a political reporter for Morris News Service. And our third panelist is John Sepulvedo, Rome Bureau Chief for Georgia Public Broadcasting. All right, now let's get started with the debate tonight. In the first round, each candidate will be asked 2 questions by our panelists. The candidates have 60 seconds to answer each question. By random selection, Pam Davidson gets the first question from Peralt Paul. Peralt?
Hi. What would you say is your opponent's biggest asset for a public service commissioner, and what would you characterize as his biggest weakness?
I would say his strongest asset is that he does well with people. He's a very personable individual. I would say that's very important in public office, regardless of how you serve. I think probably his greatest liability is that he served in the General Assembly for quite a period of time. And it's important that a public service commissioner have new, strong relationships so that they can enact laws and so that we can have continuity in energy policy. I don't know that Bubba can go over to the General Assembly, having been under the Democrat Party, the party that's not in power, and do as well as I can in that way.
We'll continue now with Jake Armstrong. Jake, you may ask your question to Lauren McDonald.
What does this week's court ruling invalidating permits for a coal-fired electrical plant in South Georgia over carbon dioxide emissions say about the future of power generation in Georgia?
Well, it says to me that we need to move in a different direction. We need to move with nuclear generation. That's the cleanest, can be the cheapest and most reliable that we can have. Building a coal-fired generation plant is the cheaper of the 2 in its initial cost. You build a gas-fired generation, it's the next as far as price is concerned, but those fossil fuels are not what we need to be looking at in Georgia's future.
On now to John Sepulvedo from Georgia Public Broadcasting. John, your turn now to ask a question to Pam Davidson.
Ms. Davidson, you just cited his switch from Democrat to Republican. You worked for a Democratic state representative, if I'm not mistaken. You were appointed to a rural development council by a sitting Democrat governor. Have you ever been a Democrat? And if so, when did you change your registration if you were a Democrat in the past? You worked with the same group that Mr. McDonald's worked with.
I think you have to work both sides of the aisle, and I think that I've proven that I can, given the success of House Bill 670. It's very different to work under a legislator as an aide and then compare, and that's what I did, in comparison to working 20 years and being appropriations chairman under the former leadership. And I wish this wasn't so. But people hold grudges, and it's important that the Public Service Commission work with the General Assembly. They're not separate entities. They're best when they work together. And I think that his integrity would be compromised given that dramatic a switch.
One question left in this first round. Paul, you can ask the final question now for Lauren McDonald.
Consumer advocates say the current policy regarding ex parte or private communications between PSC members and regulated utilities is better than it used to be, but it's still too weak. Utilities want those conversations to continue in secret. What do you think about the current policy? Should it be strengthened, weakened, or eliminated? And what will be your personal practice?
I respect the policies that the Commission has adopted as they sit right now. I have no intentions or no plans to change those policies. I think that you've got to look at changes as time changes, as you approach different levels of a rate case. Information is very important. Information from experts is very important as they come before the Commission to testify. But I have no plans to change the rules of the present ex parte.
And that concludes round one. It's now time for the candidates to ask each other 2 questions. Our candidates will have 15 seconds to ask their questions, 60 seconds to respond, and 30 seconds for a rebuttal. By random selection, Lauren McDonald will ask the first question. Lauren?
Ms. Davidson, you suggest that would not have a relationship with the members of the General Assembly. When was the last time you ran for public office, and what party did you run from?
I ran for state representative, Bubba, in 2000, which was 8 years ago. I ran as a Democrat. And in large part I did because I was representing some Republican counties, and I felt very strongly that our issues in upper rural Georgia would not be listened to if I didn't go into the present party.
30 seconds for rebuttal, if desired.
Pam, did you not register to vote in that area the week that you qualified for running for this office?
Excuse me, can you ask me that again?
Did you not register to vote in the county of residence the week that you qualified to run for this office?
I registered to vote in Fannin County, which I live in, and I registered recently.
Thank you.
Yes.
Pam Davidson, your time to ask a question to Lauren McDonald.
Bubba, as you know, it would really compromise a individual's personal integrity, but also the integrity and functioning of the Commission if you were to accept political donations from entities that you would regulate. And indeed, I'm going to hand you your financial contribution
I'm
disclosure.
told that no props are allowed
sorry.
in this, and that you're now out of time
Sorry
on the
about
question.
that. I wasn't aware of that.
Ask your question.
Had I handed it to you, you would realize that quite frankly, more than 75%, that's a conservative figure, of the money that you've taken is from entities that you would regulate. I think that is a bad practice, and I want to issue a moral challenge to you today to refrain from doing that.
Your question and your answer, sir.
Ms. Davidson, I respect your question, but I have here in my folder a copy of a letter that you sent to a marketer asking for contributions and suggesting to them that the limit is $5,900 per individual. You sent those letters to marketers that we have regulation over this last month.
Can I read that?
Brief rebuttal.
I am not going to accept a dime or a cup of coffee from any lobbyist, any entity I would regulate, and I've made that commitment today. Can we hear that from you, Bubba?
Did you not send a letter to marketers?
We'll, at this point, allow you to ask that question.
Thank you.
As a question. You have 15 seconds.
Did you not send letters to marketers?
Can you answer my question, Bubba? Are you willing to take this moral challenge and not accept?
I don't. Pam, I don't need a moral challenge. My morality is established. 25-plus years as a public servant. I've run statewide races, ran for governor in 1990. It's an open book. Anybody can
I think
look
you've
at
answered.
it.
Mr. McDonald, your question. You have 15 seconds to ask her one.
Pam, the commission is business. It just deals with big business. Can you elaborate on accelerated depreciation for me?
Accelerated depreciation. Bubba, let me tell you this. My degree, I have a bachelor's degree in organizational behavior. I took macro, I took micro, I took accounting. I don't recall what that is, and especially I don't recall the means in which it would relate to the commission. But I can assure you this, I will study harder than anybody on the commissioner, such as my would-be predecessor did, and learn, and I can assure you I will make good decisions based on that hard work.
That'll concludes our, you do have a brief rebuttal if you want 15 seconds to answer her answer.
Well, I think that answering the question that I asked, accelerated depreciation was a major part of the first rate case I sat on in 1998. And I'd like to quote from the late Commissioner Bob Durden. It was the first time that Georgia had seen a rate reduction since 1964, and this was 1998 in the first rate case that I sat on as a commissioner on the Georgia Public Service Commission.
Well, you've heard our two candidates grill each other, and that concludes the second round of questioning. And now in round number 3, we'll return to the panel of journalists. In this third round, they will ask questions of the candidate of their choice. Candidates will be allowed 1 minute to respond. And then as the moderator, I'll determine if the opposing candidate will then be given 30 seconds for rebuttal. We begin this third round of questioning now. Jake Armstrong, the first question is yours.
Ms. Davidson, what change to the state's energy policy would you advocate if elected?
There's several. First of all, I think we've greatly underutilized our energy conservation demand-side management potential. We have virtually no effort in the state, short of House Bill 670, to address reducing our load. That's first off. Second of all, we have virtually no renewable energy in Georgia, which has made us very vulnerable to the prices of natural gas, which have really skyrocketed. We now are told by the federal government that we need to have clean, affordable energy. We can do that through biomass power in Georgia, some wind and some solar. Those are the primary issues, and I would look for affordable, clean biomass power.
Mr. McDonald, you may answer that question in 30 seconds.
I certainly concur that we've got to look at all sources of energy. The renewables are there. We have conservation programs that are in place now. The Georgia Power Company elaborates continuously on conservation and how to do it. Renewables are good. They need to be elected, just like we have green power now. People can elect to use green power, and but it doesn't need to be mandated, and I won't be a mandated energy producer.
Next journalist to ask a question from GPB, John Sepulvedo.
Nuclear power. As you know, there are no nuclear waste dumps in the United States. And it's expected to be that way sometime until it's resolved in Nevada. Until that's resolved, nuclear power plants have to hold their radioactive waste on site. Chances are, if you're elected, you'll be voting on an issue very soon about it. Should construction of new nuclear plants be put on hold until the disposal issue is worked out?
To whom is the question directed?
I apologize, Ms. Davidson, yes.
I'm sorry. I am basically for nuclear. I'm going to consider nuclear, but this is a serious matter that needs great consideration. Georgia ratepayers have paid millions of dollars investing in Yucca Mountain, yet it's not a politically viable situation. In terms of nuclear waste, I am very concerned that we are going to produce something that we essentially have no place for. We have stored on site, and I don't see that as a permanent solution, so I'll look forward to that solution.
Lauren McDonald.
It is no problem. Nuclear is the way to go. We, Georgia consumers, have invested millions and millions of dollars in the Yucca Mountain project. The federal government owes us money because they haven't licensed that project. Yucca Mountain is an adequate place. There's been lots of study done, and when Senator Reid leaves the state of Nevada, we'll see that Yucca Mountain identified as a place for nuclear waste where all of it can be stored.
From the AJC, under Peralta, Paul, your turn to ask a question.
This is for Mr. McDonald. Do you believe Georgia voters should foot the bill for new utility plant construction, such as Georgia Power's proposed nuclear reactors near Waynesboro, before those plants are functional?
Well, again, it's whether you do it now or whether you do it later. The Georgia Public Service Commission operates under the laws of the state. The General Assembly of Georgia sets whether you have construction work in progress or whether you don't have construction work in progress. The laws of the state say when that generation comes online, it starts being paid for by the consumer. That's when you have the assets that you have. That's where the accelerated depreciation can come into play if there is an over earnings over the rate of return that's allowed by the commission. Then those accelerated depreciation assets can be utilized by both the company, its stockholders, and the consumers. In the rate case of 98, the consumers got $3 for every $1 the company got as far as the asset of accelerated depreciation.
Ms. Davidson, 30 seconds.
I didn't know that that was my question.
No, would you like to repeat
Can you
the
please
question
re-ask
briefly?
the question? I'm sorry.
Do you believe Georgia voters should foot the bill for new utility plant construction?
Particularly nuclear. Thank you. No, I don't. And the reason that I don't is that they may never come to fruition. Let's use the reactors at Vogtle as an example. There are a lot of ifs and buts with regard to those reactors. You've mentioned the problem with the waste. There are also cost overruns typical to nuclear, but going to be more severe perhaps because we've just are on a nuclear renaissance, as some call it. I'm not in favor of that, no. Particularly at a time when natural gas prices are so high and we're going to see an increase in rates. I think it will break the bank.
Jake Armstrong from Morris News Service, your question.
Mr. McDonald, how much do you know about your opponent's position on energy issues?
Very little, only what she has told me. I understand that she is certainly for energy that's produced from renewables. That's great. She has kind of implied that we need to have mandates in those directions, which I disagree.
John Sepulveda, your question, sir.
Mr. McDonald, Jim Wooten wrote this recently about you in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution editorial pages. This is the quote: "Times change, and Bubba the Democrat is now Lauren the Republican." I have two questions. Did you become a Republican to run for this seat, and how did you get the nickname Bubba?
Let me answer them in reverse. Sure. I have a Southern born with an older sister named Shirley. She didn't say brother, she said Bubba, and it stuck. No, I have not voted for a Democrat president since Jimmy Carter. I went to the legislature when Jimmy Carter was their governor. I voted for him when he ran for president. Have not voted for a Democratic president since then. The Democratic Party left me. I didn't leave the Democratic Party. And I ran as a Republican in 2004 for the state Senate in Forsyth County. I ran against then the Bill Stevens, who was the Senate Majority Leader. I was unsuccessful in that bid, and so that declares where I am as far as party is concerned.
Question now from Peralt Paul with the AJC.
I wanted to go back to something Ms. Davidson had asked you earlier about campaign contributions as it relates to executives, outside attorneys, and lobbyists representing the utilities. Will you accept them? And if so, why should voters have confidence that you will be a fair and impartial judge on cases that come up before you?
Yes, I have accepted those. They have been volunteered to me. Very few people are interested in what it takes to run a statewide campaign, especially for the Public Service Commission. There are those that want to have access to talk to you, that make contributions to you. Those people sometimes are some of the better experts that you can discuss things with. So yes, I have accepted contributions from them. Does it affect me? No, it doesn't. And I think my record of 4.5 years on the Georgia Public Service Commission and the rate cases that I was involved in would demonstrate exactly that it has no effect whatsoever as far as partiality is concerned.
Ms. Davidson, 30 seconds.
I'm not going to accept a dime from any entity I would regulate. I think that should be illegal, and I think the legislature should address that issue. Obviously, when you are voting on a rate of return for a private company and you are their regulator, they should not be contributing to your campaign, nor should they be whining and dining you.
Continuing with Jake Armstrong now with a follow-up question. Jake?
Ms. Davidson, you mentioned biomass as an alternative fuel. Should ratepayers pay for the investigation into biomass and other alternative fuels?
Well, I don't think there's much need for investigation. They have biomass plants all over the world, and most states have more renewable than Georgia. Georgia has virtually none. California, for example, is considering a goal of 30%. They have many biomass plants. they are typically small plants located at the site of the feedstock, wood, for example. And so they're very easy to build. So they're a great short-term energy source that's inexpensive and takes care of several waste problems until we achieve some cheap baseline power, perhaps with nuclear.
Mr. McDonald?
Sure. Y'all remember the blackouts in California just a few years ago? Lights went out all over the state. They're importing energy from other areas. Sure, I still support renewables, but I want reliability, and that's what nuclear will give us, is reliability. And one other little quick thing. We cannot accept contributions from those that we regulate by law.
John Sepulvedo from GPB, your question.
Ms. Davidson, I just want to clarify. I asked you earlier, when did you switch your party affiliation from Democrat to Republican, and why did you do that?
I switched shortly after 2002 because I realized, as Bubba did, as many Georgians have, that the United States political situation was changing. Georgians have never changed. A conservative Democrat in Georgia is a Republican elsewhere. And I wanted to vote for George Bush for president also.
Peralta Paul from the AJC, your question, sir.
Ms. Davidson, what can you do to hold down energy prices for Georgia businesses and consumers?
The first thing we have to do, again, is reduce our energy load. We are one of the highest per capita users out of any state. The second thing that we can do is we can bring on some renewable energy. And the third thing that we can do is quickly bring on some clean baseload power. Now, biomass is a baseload power, and we can bring those plants on, and 5 apparently are in line. But we're going to need a large baseline source, which nuclear could supply if we don't have the problems with nuclear that we foresee.
Mr. McDonald.
Renewables in Georgia, like wind and solar, just don't give you the reliability that you need to have. You've got to have a reliable source of energy. When you talk about the conservation side, Georgia's a growing state. We're adding millions of people every 3-4 years in the state of Georgia. These are consumers. These are the people that want to turn the lights on. That's what we've got to plan for. That's what we've got to move for. If we certify a nuclear program in the next 12 months, it'll be 2016 before the first kilowatt can come out.
Jake Armstrong, you have the final question in this round.
Prices aside, what's the most pressing issue facing consumers in today's energy market?
Today.
For whom?
Oh, for Mr. McDonald.
Sorry.
Again, the most pressing energy.
Yeah, prices aside, what's the most pressing energy issue facing consumers?
Well, energy is in different ways. And when we talk about energy, the Public Service Commission, we're talking about natural gas, we're talking about electricity. When you're talking about energy with run the automobile, you're talking about gasoline, which the Commission has nothing to do with. Being able to refocus our energy needs through different generations is going to be the first and the best way that we can do it. Again, remember, this is 2008. This is not 1975 when Plant Vogtle was being built. So there are boilerplate types of reactors that are in place, General Electric, Westinghouse, Mitsubishi. So it's not going to be a custom-built system. It's going to be a system that's almost in place to sit down and go from there. A lot cheaper comparably to the price.
And that concludes our time for the questions. Each of the Republican candidates now in the 4th PSC district will have 30 seconds for a closing statement. Lauren McDonald was randomly selected to make that first statement. Mr. McDonald.
Well, I certainly want to first off thank the Georgia Press Group for having this forum today. And again, I'm just a businessman. I've run 2 successful businesses in my adult life. The Public Service Commission has 2 major responsibilities. It has a fiduciary responsibility to those it regulates, and it has a responsibility to the consumers of this state. Look at my record. Look what I've done in the past. Look at what my plans are for the future, and vote for Lauren McDonald on July the 15th. Thank you very much.
And now Pam Davidson will give her closing statement.
Well, Georgia, I would like to ask for your vote for the Georgia Public Service Commission. I'm qualified both in my experience and my education, but most of all for my determination to turn this ship around, to choose new energy sources so that we can have clean, affordable energy. I will not accept money or gifts from the entities I regulate, and I will work with those entities I regulate, but not for them.
And that concludes our debate. We'd like to remind voters that the primary elections will be held on Tuesday, July the 15th. Our thanks to both of the candidates for joining us tonight, and also to our panel of 3 expert journalists from around the state. And we'd like to thank the Atlanta Press Club for arranging the debate. For more information about the Atlanta Press Club, you can visit their website at atlantapressclub.org. The debates that air on Georgia Public Broadcasting will be archived on the Atlanta Press Club's website for viewing later. I'm Richard Warner from Georgia Public Broadcasting. Thanks for joining us for this primary election debate on GPB.
This program was funded in part by a grant from the late Tom Watson Brown and by supporters of Georgia Public Broadcasting. Thank you.